So here we are for the next episode of Two Amazing People, and I am about 10 minutes from my house, which is pleasant because a lot of the time I'm travelling a long way up and down the country to meet these amazing people. This week I get to meet Darren Street. Darren is Gabs' amazing person. I've known Darren actually as well for a good few years, and he helped me out in my previous business. So I've got a little bit of a head start, so I already know that he's a top guy. And getting to have a good chat with him and delving into his journey and what makes him an amazing person in Gabs' eyes, and I'm sure in a lot of other people's eyes, is going to be really interesting. So we are coming down. The location that he has picked is actually his house, and he's got an absolutely spot on view looking out onto the fields behind him. So just about to rock down. I can see him at his door, and let's go and say hello.
Hello, buddy.
Thanks for seeing us. Where are we
Always
going?
a pleasure.
Where are we going for our chat?
We're going to go around here. We're going to go around to the corner, and we're going to go into the field at the back of my house, which is coincidentally the house is Kytson Barn, hence Kytson Mortgages and Finance.
There you go. Come on in, let's go. Darren, thanks for being on the podcast.
It's an absolute honour. Thank you.
How does it feel to be nominated as Gabs' amazing person?
Well, as we mentioned beforehand, to be nominated by anybody as one of their two amazing people is incredible. But being nominated by Gabriella is possibly even more amazing because she knows a hell of a lot of people. So to be in the top two is humbling.
Yeah, well done. It's a good effort. I don't know if I'd have made it in the top two for Gabs, but she was in my top two. She was my amazing person.
She definitely mentioned to me that if you hadn't already been taken, I'd have been number 3. So.
Or 4 or 5. So this is how it works, and you know by now we have 30 minutes. I've drafted some questions which I hope will flow nicely.
I'm sure they will.
And this bit, and I say it to everybody, this is the bit where I don't edit it or cut it. We just have a 30-minute run through. Whatever you say goes out.
Yeah, okay.
Just remember that bit.
I was going to say, I feel overwhelmingly self-conscious. But
so just don't do yes and no answers, because that'd be really awkward, and we'll finish it after 2 minutes.
Anyone knows me, I can talk. So.
Well, 30 minutes, that's what we got. So I'm going to start with this one, which I think is quite a soft one, actually. And it is, what drew you into the world of mortgages and business finance? And is there a personal story or moment that sparked it?
It's an amalgamation of decades of experience as both as an individual and as a businessman as well, where I had been on both sides of the fence, and something I feel passionate about and something that I wanted to progress. So I won't mention the particular lender, but a number of years ago, when I wasn't involved in financial services, I took a very well-known high street bank to the financial ombudsman. Because
did you know what?
I'm now on their panel.
So that's worked its way around.
So yeah.
What was the reason behind it? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, no. So I had a commercial mortgage, which is I'm going to try and sound non-dull as possible.
Go on then.
Which is not normally considered what's called a regulated transaction.
Right.
Anyway, I sold the business, and in the process of selling the business, I had to redeem the commercial mortgage. And at the time, it was outside my understanding, and I've always considered myself to be pretty financially sophisticated. And I was hit with a £50,000 early repayment charge that I wasn't anticipating. And so I'll try and keep it within the half an hour for this one story.
Go for it, because it didn't take me long to prepare all of these questions and do a deep dive at all. I could have just done one question and just been at it.
I protested this, and I asked them to work out the early repayment charge, and and it was all based against what's called gilt rates. And again, anyway, so they didn't understand it. They couldn't actually. They found it really, really difficult. And my point was how on earth can I possibly work this out when you, as a very well-known large high street bank, you can't work it out. And anyway, so I represented myself. I went to the financial ombudsman. I won.
Wow.
And I just feel that there's a lot of people in that don't get good advice, and so it's something that I've become very, very passionate about guiding what can be complex, but putting it over in a simplistic, straightforward way.
And the fact that you've gone through it.
Yeah, and I've gone through it, and I've sat, and something obviously I've received mortgage advice myself in the past, and I've been a business owner, and I've run businesses, and I've borrowed money, and I've put my neck on the line, and I've sat on both sides of the desk, and on the basis that I'm largely unemployable, I would need to.
So you set your business up out of necessity.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
But then conversely as well, I genuinely something I feel passionate about, and trying to impart that knowledge and genuinely help people is where it all comes from.
Well, it's nice because the next one I have on here, you said help, and this flows nicely again.
Yeah.
What you do in helping someone secure a home or funding can quite literally be life-changing.
Absolutely.
Whether you always appreciate it or not, it can be. So is there a moment in what you've done in your work that really moved you? Because you do have these life-changing moments, and typically I'd say that relates to a story of a client that you'll never forget. So again, there's no names in any of this, but
yeah, I mean, it's very easy to be drawn to what I would call the sexier cases, when people are borrowing millions of pounds and things like that. And
but it's not always the biggest ones, as you say.
no,
It's not that.
It's not about that, because that becomes a monetary transaction. There was a lady that, and I can actually duplicate this story in similar circumstances many times over, where she was a sister of an existing client, and they passed on my details, and she'd split up from her partner. She'd walked into her bank that she banked with, wanted to borrow some money to buy her partner out. Partner was, so it looked like she was going to have to sell the house. Her affordability was massively short with this bank. She had no idea what to do. So I got a phone call, and she said, "Oh, can I talk to you?" I said, "I'm really sorry, I'm a little busy at the moment, but I'll call you this evening." And she was just hyperventilating, and she thought, "Where am I going to live? I've got to sell the house. My ex is going to force me out of the house." And she was in a, and I said, "Don't worry, I will ring you this evening, and I just need to finish what I'm doing, and I'll come back to you." And anyway, she said at the end of that conversation, we'd gone through everything. I'd taken all of the details, and I said, "Yeah, okay." I can't even remember who she banked with at the time, and I won't mention the lender's name; it's unprofessional. But it didn't fit their criteria, which is often the case, and that's where we come in. And by the end of that evening, she said to me at the end of the evening, she said, "I'm going to sleep tonight. Thank you very much."
But it's that little thing there at the end
Yeah,
that just makes you go.
and she's like, "I'm actually going to sleep because I've been losing sleep over this. I didn't think it was possible." And I said, "Oh, actually, your circumstances are," and I found it somewhat of an obscure lender, but it fit their criteria, and it was all affordable, and it all worked. And she remortgaged her house, paid off her partner, and it all worked out. And that is something that is moving, and you realise how enormously impactful you've been on somebody's life.
Yeah, which is, again, it is important to remember, because the example when you were talking earlier, there was no textbook answer from the scenario where you took the bank to court, because they couldn't explain to you. And I'd imagine with each person that comes to you, their circumstances will be very similar, but they're all unique.
Yeah.
And the emotions that they have with that are also unique to them, their feelings, the weight, meaning they can sleep at night. And so the fact that you can give them what they need, not just in the money sense, but everything that comes with that, is really important.
Yeah, and like I say, there's countless stories of where sometimes people are actually possibly overly grateful for doing something that is really quite straightforward. And
but straightforward to you.
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose, but there's sometimes you've worked really, really hard, and something's been super challenging, and you've had, and sometimes you've been on a little bit of a roller coaster with a client because you have to set people's expectations. I like to try and under promise and over deliver. Um, and
Mm.
but yeah, so when you get to the end of that journey sometimes, and you can almost see all of their stress in one moment just dissipate, it really is a truly rewarding feeling.
But leading on, I've got a little line here that says finance can feel overwhelming to people.
Yeah.
So we've just talked about that. And so my question here is, how do you build the trust and offer more than just numbers?
So something that this is going to sound a little bit salesy, but something I believe in. Um, it's integrity, and sometimes I had a case last month where somebody wanted to do a certain set of circumstances, and I believe that the lender would have probably accepted it. However, I personally believe that they were leading themselves into an awful situation,
Yeah.
and I simply wasn't prepared to advise on it because it was the I felt that it was going to be a terrible outcome for them,
Yeah.
and sometimes people are not appreciative of that, but we're not order takers. We are meant to be giving, in this case, regulated financial advice and looking out for our clients' best interests and outcomes. And I think if you conduct yourself with integrity, overwhelmingly people respect that, and then they talk to other people.
Yeah. And knowing your value that you bring, not compromising on it, and then equally using a similar word, sticking to your values
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah, yeah,
It's, you know, that all feeds into that integrity side of it. And I think once you find people that appreciate that, then they're the good people that you want to work with, right?
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I can't even remember what the question was now.
That's right. I was asking, how do you build trust, and you've answered it. It's
Yeah,
integrity.
yeah.
You know, and it does come down to that one simple word, I would say. And I can't think of a better way of describing it than other than integrity in what you do and what other people do
Yeah,
as well
and I revert back to
in life.
the previous story. At one point, I had my bank managers come and see me. I went through something. It was explained to me. It wasn't explained to me fully.
Mm.
Um, and then when it came to the back end, at the end of that process, then I felt enormously disappointed. And I always try and point out to somebody the good and the bad and everything, warts and all, in the process, and then people then will then hopefully
They've got
feel
all the
they've
information,
got all of the
good and bad.
information,
Yeah,
and then they can make an informed decision off the back of it.
yeah, perfect. So you're a business owner. You've been running your business for a while,
Yeah,
good few years.
yeah, yeah.
And I have a question. I think I've only asked it to a few people so far, but I'll ask it for you because I think it's important with COVID times and money and the cost of living crisis and things like that, interest rates going crazy. So it does tie in, and it's just asking, have you ever faced a moment in your own business where things felt uncertain, and what helped you to stay grounded and keep on going?
Um, so, given the backdrop of what I do, and COVID, and we seem to, over the years, many people, and I know a lot of people in the industry, where you think, "Oh, would it be possible just to have 12 months of something close to stability? Because you're meant to be trying to guide people, and then you've got all of these scenarios, and um, so instability has possibly been the only consistent. so,
But
so,
do you know what? That
so,
it's something in life as well, though. I remember, you know, you start a new year and you say, "I just want this year to be a normal year."
yeah.
And then you, as you get older, you realise there is no normal.
No,
And when you say you want stability and consistency, you
so
soon realise the only stability is the inconsistency.
so
You know.
at the risk of possibly alienating half of the people that watch this. So Brexit as well.
Which will be around 2 million people, by the way.
Yeah, so,
Give or take 2 million.
so Brexit was enormously, regardless of what people's political views was, but it was enormously destabilising. So we've had that. We then went on to be locked into our houses for 6 months. I mean, and years ago, who would have ever possibly? And then you're talking to people and you're talking to business owners and you're trying to look at solutions and discuss things with them. And it's what is happening, um, and then we have the infamous Liz and Quasi. I mean, where literally at one day you're talking about interest rates and lending rates on a residential mortgage of 1 to 2%, and then overnight they became 6%. Like, and you're trying to guide people through this, and so the inconsistency, and of course that has an impact on business, and in some ways,
And your business.
yeah,
as well.
it has an impact on our own
Yeah.
on our own income, and in some ways, and I hate to say this because this sounds awful, in some ways, it's certain things have been incredibly positive,
Yeah.
where it's generated huge demand in over a short period of time. But equally as well, sometimes when there's been so much uncertainty out there, people have held back and thought, I don't want to do anything at the moment. But
Yeah.
so maybe one day we'll go through 12 months of economic stability.
It won't happen.
Where a European country's not invaded, or somebody doesn't do strange something with tariffs,
But that again proves the point.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? You know, the only consistency is the inconsistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I talk about, I can't advise what's going to happen to interest rates, but what I can advise on is the implications of them going up or down, and how that impacts on whatever borrowing someone's got. And I always like to go almost back to the 1970s and look at the fluctuations of things that have happened. And then that way, I always work on the premise of, if you look at the past, it's always a reasonably good barometer of what could happen in the future.
Yeah, and also take advantage of when there is a moment of certainty, because what you've given them when you've laid it out in front of them is what is for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you're not delving into years ahead or anything.
No.
That's the state of play today, based on all the information you've got. There's your moment of certainty that you're put in front of them, and that's the certainty in the uncertainty, I'd say.
That's going to
you can take that. That's for your website. Yeah. So how are we doing? We're doing all right. We're not doing too bad. I just want to say, when I was talking to Gabs, I absolutely knew we were not going to get this in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
so you said you waffled. And Gabs will watch this and she'll have a smile on her face. There's no way we were going to have the questions in 30 minutes with Gabs, which is why it was an extended.
Better, but I'm definitely on that.
We're doing okay. We're nearly halfway through, and we're nearly halfway through, so we're doing all right.
Brilliant.
So, but some of these we've kind of covered off already. One of the questions here, we're talking about values, and there is one note on here. What values guide the way you work with people, especially when their dreams are on the line?
So again, I use that one word. It's called integrity.
Yeah.
And the other one that I will often trot out as well is that I'm an advisor. I'm not a salesman.
Yeah.
And so I advise. I can genuinely say, hand on the heart, I've never advised a single product or scenario to anyone that I genuinely do not feel was in their absolutely their best interests. And the FCA a few years ago brought in a concept called consumer duty, which again now becoming extremely dull. I'm sorry for everybody turning off as we're speaking, but it's about customer outcomes, and I applaud it. And I think that should always be the case, trying to work out the best outcomes for a client, and pointing out to whether they don't necessarily, it's not, and just trying to educate them as best they possibly can to think you need to consider this.
Yeah, but surely, you say about you should be providing the best outcomes for clients.
Yeah.
Surely that should be the number one goal.
Well,
it should never be, well, we'll provide the average
you would
outcomes for the
hope. You would
clients.
hope so. It's not necessarily something I've always witnessed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is what I was getting to.
yeah,
It should. I always find it crazy, and I know it exists in every industry. But number one should be, how can I best help this person?
yeah,
And a lot you said about not being a salesperson, and people with less integrity, it's not about helping that person, it's always helping themselves.
yeah.
So the fact we keep coming back to how do we best help this person is a sign for why you're an amazing person so far, eh? I say
Well,
so far
yeah.
because I've
So,
still got another few more questions
well,
to go,
let's
Darren.
see if
So
let's see if I slip off my
yeah,
mantle.
yeah, this is it. So I've got one. Actually, this is a really good one. I think it's a good one anyway. So what's a misconception people have about what you do, and what would you want them to understand instead?
I think so. Somebody who mentored me many years ago. Um, I'm I'm not an accountant. Um, I'm not a surveyor. I'm not a quantity surveyor. Um, um, I'm not an architect. However, very often people sometimes anticipate I can be all of
Hmm.
those things. So I can be talking to a business owner, um, and I can be talking about how best to get ready for an upcoming potential residential mortgage that they're looking to get. They want to move, and then they start to ask me tax advice. Now, of course, you pick up a certain amount of knowledge along the way, but in those instances, that's when I try and then connect people to people that I trust and work with, so where we can get all of the moving parts to a transaction, because I can't be everything to everybody. But what I can
Yeah.
do is I've got an overview, and I've got people that I'll work closely with. So does that answer your
But
question?
yeah, it does, because I think for me it would have a massive red flag if somebody was trying to portray themselves
Yeah,
as somebody that knew everything about everything. And I think I was always taught that you can never know everything about everything, but you should put yourself in a position where you know enough about enough.
yeah.
And I think
So
in what you do, you are an expert in one area, and you know enough about enough in other areas.
yeah, so in fact, actually, I think I recently spoke to something about where I've got a client that looking at a project, and they had a certain amount of build cost, and because of my own personal experience and looking at these types of deals, I looked at the build costs and was like, I think it's possibly optimistic. Now, I'm not really qualified to make that statement, other than quite a significant amount of experience,
Yeah.
and I just flagged it with them and just say, look, just need to be wary of this, just be careful with this. However, if you'd like to talk to somebody, I can arrange that, and then you can get a more expert informed choice.
But that is that using that word, then it becomes their choice.
Yeah,
That's not you. You've said what you've had to say. You've advised them to the best of your ability. You've not overstepped what they're talking to you about initially,
yeah,
and then it's their choice what they do with that.
yeah,
How I
absolutely.
see it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I've got a nice one here, and this, if you're not going to say this person's name, I'm pretty sure they're going to be very disappointed in you.
Okay.
So, who helped you feel like the kind of success you've achieved was possible? And this is a mentor, a friend, or possibly a family member.
um, so, so the person who is certainly my best friend, my business partner, my biggest critic,
Hmm.
um, is my wife. Um, she is phenomenal. We've worked together for years and years and years. Um, and some people often say, well, how do husbands and wife work together? And I think very often people, we're very lucky it does work.
Yeah.
Although you certainly wouldn't want to put a sound recorder in the office, but it works really, really well. She's certainly got strengths that cancel out my weaknesses,
But
and
that's a good dynamic.
yeah, and it works.
Yeah.
It works incredibly well. And she is really, really good when I'm feeling um, uh, 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 patting myself on the back She'll point out my shortfalls, but conversely, when I'm possibly being a bit overly critical, she'll pick me back up again. So thank you,
Yeah.
Caroline.
Well, it's good that you said that, because if it was somebody else's name, you'd have been in big trouble when we
No,
finished this.
I genuinely, from the
But
bottom of my heart, she's phenomenal, and yeah, she's every part of um, the success of our business,
yeah.
at least as much as I am, if not more. She's truly talented.
But that dynamic you said about some husbands and wives and partners can't work with each other, and I think failing sometimes, not to generalize, is that you haven't got the two sides to it that you've mentioned. You've got the one where it's the pat on the back when you need it, and it's the one where you get a kick in the shin when you need it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's not always pats on the back, it's not always kicks in the shin, it's
No,
just having that nice
but that's what.
balance and respect.
But having people close to you in your life, it's not all about overly congratulating people. It's sometimes about pulling people up and pointing this out, and perhaps you should perhaps you should think about it like in this way, and you should think
Yeah.
about it in that way. Um, so yeah, Caroline is just a phenomenal. I mean, obviously she has the misfortune of being my wife, but yeah, she's phenomenal.
Good. Again, that will go out. Remember, this isn't cut, so that will go out. Couple more questions if I can. So, what's a lesson you've learned the hard way, not an easy one, the hard way while running and growing your business?
This business in general.
Just one, when you go back, I think I remember chatting to Steve about it in episode 1, that you make mistakes, of course, but if you make them twice, it's a mistake. So we have a few of those, but the lessons, some of the lessons are easy ones where you just brush it off and go, you know what, I'm not going to do that again. And other ones, you've done it and you think, wow, that was tough. And now I know moving forward, I know what I'll be doing or not doing rather.
Well,
Because this is for business owners and people in the same
yeah.
industry as well that
So
would go,
so
thanks for the advice.
I think so. It's really interesting. We have a similar circles, and we know a lot of the similar people. And even though that we all perhaps do different things for a living, but often in some ways that we're on similar journeys. And I've been on the journey of being business owner, or a director, or a shareholder for literally decades, and um, I've had some amazing days that have felt triumphant, and I've also had a number of days where I haven't slept at night, and we've all been there.
Yeah.
And it sounds really cliche, but it's treating those events both as equal imposters, where
Mm-hmm.
you appreciate that today's a bad day. Today's not a bad day, but in the next month, I'll get up on a Monday and I'll be like, right, that's it, I'm going to get a job. And then on Tuesday, maybe it's not so bad. On Wednesday, I want to go for world domination. Thursday, I'm somewhere in between, and Friday, it's in the weekend, and off we go again.
No,
It's
but
just,
that's important, isn't it?
yeah, um, and it's just managing. And I think when you do run your own business, you are on that somewhat of a roller coaster.
You are, and I mean, it comes back to an exception or choice thing, sorry. And so when I talk a lot about happiness, and so
Yeah,
I would say that I choose to be happy. That's how I live my life. I choose to be happy, and every decision and action that I take contributes, in my mind, to my happiness. But there's also an accepting and a knowing that there'll be days where I get up and I won't be happy,
yeah,
or something would happen. I'll be, really down in the dumps, or I'll have a particularly tricky session with a client, or whatever it may be. But there's something that would take you back.
yeah,
And it's knowing that those days will happen, but also accepting the fact that you're choosing to be happy. And so the next day that you wake up, you're still on that path. And it's not always that, it can be a bit like that. And I think that's the same for business as well. It's knowing, using that same example, that if I choose to run and grow a successful business, it's knowing that my actions will always be trying to contribute to that.
yeah.
But equally, there will be times and there'll be days where it does go wrong, or you do have a difficult moment or a difficult week or period, but it doesn't change the fact that your whole intention is to run and grow a successful business.
Yeah, and exactly that, and just knowing that you're on that journey, the journey never ends. So
This is it.
I always think there's an ability. It's now becoming overly deep, but I always think there's something in life where you think you look upon life as a destination. When we do this, when we do that, when we get to this point, and so, and I've learned in business that never really quite arrives. So don't be disappointed, and just accept you're always on that journey.
And that doesn't mean it's a failure.
Yeah.
And it doesn't change the fact that that's what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
It's just, like I say, these things happen.
Yeah.
You know. So I have one more question, if that's all right.
Of course.
And I'll end on this. If this podcast helps just one person feel seen or inspired, what do you hope they take away from your story? And what I mean by that is, if people are listening to you and they're resonating with your story and what you've told and parts of it and whatnot, what do you hope they're taking away from what you said?
I would hope if we come back again to, so obviously it could be a lot of business owners that are watching this as well. So when you're having that bad day and you're sat there at 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep and something's going through your head,
and then you send an email,
yeah,
you know, or whatever it may be.
yeah, and again, I've been that you realise that it's super cliche, but tomorrow is another day, and 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 it may well be a really really good one. And then you won't sleep the next night because you're excited. But it all leads to sleep deprivation.
I've been there and done that many times. It's not good. So the whole purpose of the Two Amazing People podcast is to shine light on amazing people, which makes amazing people feel uncomfortable, but it's shining a light on you. And the target is to raise £100 million of business generated off the back of this podcast for amazing people, which means I need to ask the question of how can the people listening help you in your business?
Um, I I'd like to be, so our uniqueness is that there is lots of really really capable commercial brokers and advisors out there. There's lots of really really capable regulated mortgage advisors out there. We have an expertise genuinely in both, and very often that we can formulate an answer where I can look at both sides of it, and I can come up with a solution, people. So anybody that would like our expertise and help in an introduction to people that in some way may have a problem that they believe that may not be solvable, we may be able to find it.
And they know they'll be talking to a person who has very high values and centers themselves around integrity.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yes, more than hope so.
So
you know how this bit works then.
yeah.
I'd like to know who your two amazing people are that you're nominating. That's all right.
Yeah.
And just in a very short few words, why they are amazing to you.
So when this was put to me that I'd been selected by Gabriella, she gave me essentially two pieces of criteria. One, people that you've got professional respect for, and two, somebody you trust your children with. And the first one is a really long list. There's lots and lots of people that I consider. The second one is not tougher because it's possibly rude to lots of people, but there was two people that really sprung to mind very very quickly. So one is Simon Evans, who is a business connection and a friend, and I talk about integrity. Simon has it in abundance, and he advises on private healthcare and Simon, again, he's not transactional. He'll try and provide the right solution and the right fit for somebody. And they are qualities that I deeply admire. And now probably relating to grandson, and I know, and obviously mentioned it to him, I could literally drop Sullivan at his front door and go, there you go, sorry, you. And I think he'd be a little shocked, but I could leave there with zero fear that he wasn't going to be anything but exceptionally well taken care of. And the other one, in no particular order, is Ben Pinches. So Ben is just an absolutely lovely person who is incredibly talented at connecting people. I've never ever known him to be in a bad mood. I suspect he must have them, but he's just
He's only human.
Yeah, I know, but he doesn't appear to be. He's just a lovely, lovely, warm, intelligent, engaging human being who is full of integrity, wonderfully talented at what he does, and without any hesitation whatsoever, those two people are very, very special people. And I apologise to anyone else because I actually could come up with a very, very long list. Sadly, I'm limited to 2.
Well, I look forward to meeting them. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that.
Pleasure.
So there you have it. That was the episode with Darren Street for the Two Amazing People podcast. And the one word that I took away from there most was integrity. And integrity is exactly what you want when somebody is dealing with something that can be life-changing for that person or that business. And Darren certainly has that in abundance. So next week, we will be going to see Ben Pinches, who is the other half of Gabriella from episode 2. And Ben, it's going to be an interesting chat. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you're enjoying watching the series, and please keep watching and supporting. Thanks very much.